On this road trip, we were going to go to Chaco Canyon, Bears Ears, and then on to Capitol Reef. I started out alone, and Nance would fly out and meet me in Salt Lake after a couple weeks. So in the beginning, I was hoping to camp. As it turned out, the only place I'd camp was Chaco Canyon, which is the first stop here. Here's the Chaco campground. The first Chaco hike I'd do was the Pueblo Alto Trail. Here you can see where you climb up to the mesa through that crack in the rock. Up from the top of the mesa you can look down on Pueblo Bonito. This is looking at New Alto from Pueblo Alto. Some of the walls of Pueblo Alto. And some of the canyons in the late afternoon light. These are ancient steps carved into the side of the mesa. Traces of fossilized shrimp burrows. They're about 100 million years old. And here looking down, east in the canyon. The trails across the slick rock are marked with cairns. And they go through fissures in the rock sometimes. Here we are looking over Chaco Canyon and another view of the same ruin. It's getting late by the time I finish the hike. That's looking through the South Gap. A beautiful evening, nice warm evening. But by morning, the wind is gusting to 45 and there's ice on the tent. It's a good day to stay in the canyon on the Penasco Blanco Trail. It's a long hike, but mostly flat. I run through the canyon. There are a number of petroglyphs along this trail. And after you cross the Chaco Wash, you come to the Supernova petroglyph. Penasco Blanco has never been excavated. It dates from about 900. On the way back, dead animals and live animals. Here's another of the really old great houses, Una Vida. This is the great kiva of Chaco Canyon and a mesa wall, all in the evening. On my third day, I'd go up the South Mesa to Tsin Kletzen and then circle around the South Mesa, descending on the other side and coming back through the South Gap. It's a spectacular hike. Much of it across the top of the mesas. Here I can see Pueblo Alto and New Alto in the distance. More fissures to squeeze through. Here we are at the top. And that's Pueblo Alto again across the canyon. This is on the descent. I'm going to stop for lunch. Here's the easy descent down the South Mesa Trail and into the South Gap. Spectacular open desert. After Chaco, I drove from New Mexico to Utah, Bears Ears area, along past Montezuma Creek. And that evening, explored around the Tank Mesa and had supper at Sand Island. Went up the Butler Wash Road a bit just to sort of feel my way around. During this time, I stayed in Bluff, Utah, in a small motel, but I was out all day from first light all the way till dark, often after dark. This view is on my way up the Comb Ridge to the procession panel. There's a fellow in this photograph. He's kind of hard to find, though. He's so small. Again, lots of slick rock marked with cairns. Beautiful scenery. High cliffs dropping off into the valley beyond. And then the petroglyphs themselves are just spectacular. Popular interpretation of this petroglyph is of a migration story. That evening I went down to the Gooseneck State Park. Here's a view of the Moki Dugway, which climbs the side of Cedar Mesa, and views of Valley of the Gods from up on Cedar Mesa. Every evening I'd be out taking photographs of the scenery. As the sun went down, the light got low. There were signs of cattle grazing here, but it's hard to imagine how they could have possibly survived. The next hike began from an old drill hole, ran across the open country for a while, the desert, and then down into a canyon. This is the Lower Butler Wash Trail, and it led to a ruin and a huge panel of petroglyphs along the San Juan River. The bottom of the canyon was dense with brush. I mean, it was like being in the jungle. After this, it was time to head north, so I went up to Canyonlands. This is on my way to pick up Nancy in Salt Lake. This is Newspaper Rock. Stopped at the Edge of Cedars Museum in Blanding, Utah. That's a terrific place. Still eating out every night. After I picked up Nancy in Salt Lake, we went to Capitol Reef, where we had a cabin reserved in just outside the park. Chimney Rock in the evening, and then just to the right of it, looking up the at the Water Pocket Fold as the sun's going down and the moon comes up. Next day we drove south across the side of Boulder Mountain up to about 10,000 feet, and then down along the Burr Trail Road and down into Strike Valley. These are 100-million-year-old oysters along the road there. We're, well down in the desert again. We'd been down into the Strike Valley. We came back up the Water Pocket Fold, and these are views from the top, looking out across to the east. Another day, we did a hike into Lower Spring Canyon. Although we saw lots of people in the parks, once we got off on the trails, we pretty much had it to ourselves. Sometimes we'd see one or two people, but for the most part, we were alone. We rented a Jeep for the day to do the Cathedral Valley Road. I'm glad we did. It began with a ford across a river that was about a foot deep. We drove down the riverbed and then made another turn to get back out of the river. But we ended up in the desert. Very rocky road in places, but spectacular scenery. And before we knew it, we were driving home. We did stop in Kansas for a day, went to the Natural History Museum, and ate Thai food. Got caught outside Indianapolis at a complete dead stop on I-70. Crossed into New York in a rainstorm.